News that impacts you and your community. 13 on Your Side Evening Plus starts now.
Hi there, everyone. Happy Monday. I'm Julia Gorman. Welcome into tonight's edition of Evening Plus. Hope everyone is doing okay. I know it's been a long couple of days with all of the severe weather we've been seeing across all different parts of Michigan. That's going to be a big thing we talk about tonight. Take a look here. First, we'll talk with meteorologist Colton Woods just about a recap of what we saw happen across the state yesterday. We're also going to touch on more severe weather that's on the way Wednesday. He's going to walk us through that. We'll show you some more video that we've gathered. And then we'll be speaking live with a representative from the Better Business Bureau about scams to keep in mind if you're having to have something on your property or your home repaired, things to watch out for so you don't end up getting scammed in one way or another or your money taken. And then finally, we will be hearing from a representative with the Grand Rapids Police Department about some events that are happening over the next week or so aimed at providing resources for victims of different crimes in our community. So lots to get to. I want to start first. Colton, thanks so much for being here. You guys have been working just nonstop over since yesterday morning, early yesterday morning with Amber, and then you guys all joined the crew. I want to take a look first at our outage map from Consumers Energy. This is what we're looking at right now. So obviously all those little flecks of color are different levels of how many people are out of power, the red being where it is more severe. Obviously Grand Rapids kind of off to the left there, but you're seeing kind of sprinkles of power outages all over our area. Still is improved from this morning, of course, from last night, but definitely something many people in our area still without power. So I want to talk, I know we got some new information just in the last couple of hours about the fact that yes, we did in fact have a tornado touchdown here in Michigan. I want to start there because I know we had some questions from people at home writing in, like, was there actually a tornado? What was kind of the clarification there? So we do have a bunch of video of damage across the area. So our producers in the booth, feel free to take that whenever. But Colton, as far as that learning of that tornado confirmation, how does that work?
Yeah, so usually the National Weather Service the next day will go out and survey tornado damage. You can't rate a tornado if a tornado is indicated by radar, obviously, while it's happening, because you don't determine a rating of a tornado based on actual wind speed, because it's very hard to actually get to a tornado and obviously measure the winds in a tornado.
Sure.
Number one, it's dangerous, and number two, it's just very, very hard to do. So what they do is the following day, the National Weather Service goes out, surveys the damage. They usually bring engineers to if it's severe enough, and then they determine based on the enhanced Fujita scale, which was back in 2007 when they started that, and they determined that based on the damage, and then they rate the tornado. And there was an EF0 tornado confirmed near Caledonia, which was bringing 80-mile-per-hour winds, at least estimated to bring 80-mile-per-hour winds, and also was on the ground for about 5 miles. So pretty impressive.
Yeah, and was that, obviously, it takes, as you were mentioning, they have to go out and look and assess that damage. How does, from your perspective, just to kind of provide a little bit of a behind-the-scenes look, you guys were on the air for hours yesterday talking about it, and you thought this was the case from what you're seeing. What is it that you guys see that indicates that this could be a tornado? What are you guys looking for, up until that's confirmed?
Yeah, so during yesterday when our severe storms were moving through the region, we were looking at the radar. There is this thing called velocity in the radar, so the radar actually looks at the winds moving in the storm, and there's red, that means outbound winds, green means inbound winds, so you can really actually see where there's rotation in the storm as it's currently moving through West Michigan, and obviously we also had straight line winds move through, so all of those, and combined, we saw the rotation on the radar with the red and green super close to each other.
I remember seeing
and
that.
That's what we were looking at as these storms move through, and that's where the rotation is and where a possible tornado could be. And also we looked at CC, it's called correlation coefficient, and it basically determines where debris could possibly be in a storm system, and we did see signatures of that, especially in southern Newaygo County, which I'm sure the National Weather Service will also go in southern Newaygo County and possibly determine if that was an actual tornado, which I think that will end up happening over the next coming hours probably.
Yeah, and like you said, it takes time. You can't just look at the radar and say, yep, tornado. It has to be, have to look at the evidence, and that's how it works across the country.
Exactly.
I did want to, we had been talking about this for several days, but this did, I know at least for me, I was at home and it started to rain, and I live in Grand Rapids, and then things sort of progressed very quickly, where I had to grab my 2 cats and get in the bathroom. I live in an apartment, so I got in a windowless bathroom, which was the most interior room that I had, and kind of wait that out, was watching you guys on the stream, was texting my family members. But for anyone who needs a kind of refresher on just, what to be prepared to do and how quickly, it went from no rain to all of a sudden all my furniture on my patio was going crazy. Can you walk us just through some of those general tips for when we start to see something like this happen and we get those alerts on our phones?
Yeah, for sure. The most important thing is right when you replace in either a tornado warning, a severe thunderstorm warning, make sure you go inside. If you have anyone that's outside, obviously super dangerous. That's the last place you want to be, is being outdoors. So taking shelter inside in the most interior spot of your house. If you don't have a basement, going into, like what you said, a bathroom possibly, or a closet in the very interior portion of your house, that's the safest spot to be because you're not super close to the outside. You want to be protected with many walls possible. So that's definitely the best advice, to just get inside and take shelter.
Yeah, and of course we always emphasize this too. If you live in any sort of a mobile home, even if you are somehow secured to the ground, you have one of those mobile homes that has a foundation, it's not a safe place to be, which is why of course you want to be thinking about all of this ahead of time.
Exactly. With mobile homes, it's definitely best. If you do live in one, if the outlook is pretty severe, it would be a good idea to go to some other place that you can take shelter and not be in your mobile home.
Sure, sure. And the video we've been showing here has, of course, been from several different counties in our area from what we just saw happen yesterday. I wanted to talk about, too, because we've also been hearing from a lot of people concerns about what's happening in more northern Michigan, where these ice storms have really wreaked havoc in that area, and that's been for several days now. If folks haven't heard about that, what happened there? What's continuing to happen? We have some video of that too that we can show in a moment. But what's going on there, and where exactly are we talking about?
Yeah, so northern, lower Michigan, so including places like Alpena, Gaylord. I actually talked with a resident that used to live in Norton Shores in Muskegon County, but now she lives in Alpena. And she said from Friday night until Monday morning, so well over 48 hours, even pushing 72 hours, there was freezing rain falling. So that is an insanely long time to have just rain accumulate and turn into ice, which obviously during that duration, it's sticking to power lines, trees. The trees were sagging on the roadways, making them impassable, and also knocking down power. So the entire northern portion of lower Michigan is pretty devastated, unfortunately.
And so do we have that video, guys, that we can play to show that? Some video of the ice storm up there? Oh, there we go. Okay, yeah, so this is some drone video of exactly what you were just describing, the trees just being weighed down. So the freezing rain is over.
Correct.
But is it still cold in that portion?
It's still cold.
It's cold here, so still cold there. And so still, I'm sure a lot of cleanup
and
in
it's
that area
not really
still.
melting either. And in fact, the Mackinac Bridge is also closed because of falling ice as well, because it takes a while for ice to actually melt, and it's still cold, like you said. I talked to the Alpena woman earlier today, and she said temperatures are in the 20s, so that ice is unfortunately not going to melt. But as it does eventually melt, the falling ice on the Mackinac Bridge is definitely a pretty big concern, so that is why they closed the Mackinac Bridge as well. But yeah, that looks pretty tornado-like damage in those forests. So it's pretty insane that even ice can do that, let alone a tornado as well.
Oh, so you're saying the damage there looks
tornadic
like in style, but obviously not a tornado just from the ice.
Yeah, pretty crazy.
Yeah, gosh, hopefully things can thaw up there. And I think I went out of order. I did have a chunk of sound from earlier about the damage here in West Michigan. Are we able to play that, you guys? Are we able to kind of back up there for a second? Okay, let me just preface one thing. So we do have a big bite, a big sound bite from an interview, or rather from a press conference, dating, circling back to what we were talking about here in the West Michigan area, not, northern anymore, but we saw so much damage, so many people with damage, and the big story that we were following today was unfortunately this tree that fell on a van, and 3 kids in that van did die. And we heard from, in a press conference, the Kalamazoo County Sheriff kind of just explain what happened there and just how nobody could have seen this coming. We can play that now for you.
They're from the Branch County area, was traveling into Kalamazoo County to go visit a relative. As they were traveling, the storm that we all watched, high winds and a lot of hazardous weather yesterday related to the lightning and wind came down fast. The family's vehicle was struck by a tree as they were traveling down the road. It's a very large tree, came across the middle of their passenger van and did extensive damage to the point where the tree, being as large as it was, went deep into the vehicle, and actually it was such a large tree that it came across 2 lanes of traffic and out the other side of the vehicle for about 12 more feet. So the difficulty here is that there's really, it looks like nothing anybody could have done. Family could have not avoided this. They didn't predict that something would happen in that area at that time, and ultimately this came very suddenly and fell right behind the driver's door and across the passenger area where all the children were seated.
Really devastating and horrific situation there, and unfortunately, you know, I know we went to another scene yesterday too, where another tree had fell on a car, I believe it was, and then of course just damage all over the place from, you know, in different ways, whether it's your house or your property or trees. Unfortunately, you know, we are looking at something along similar lines for Wednesday. We've already got an impact alert out for Wednesday. Walk me through rather, kind of the parameters, what we're looking at. You know, is this similar to what we had Sunday? Is it different? And what areas are we talking about?
It looks kind of similar as to Sunday, but thankfully, Julia, I think a lot of the rain during the morning and early afternoon hours might limit the instability, which is a very important ingredient that you need for severe weather. So while the system overall looks similar to Sunday, I think we might be okay and it won't be as severe as Sunday, but obviously we will pay attention over the coming days. But thankfully right now we're seeing some sunshine finally along the lakeshore in Muskegon, Grand Haven, and Holland. Still holding on to a little bit of clouds though in Grand Rapids. And things are a lot cooler as well. We're in the 30s right now, seeing some sunshine along the lakeshore. And thankfully when you're in the 30s, you usually don't see severe weather. So we're at least seeing a temporary break right now in the severe weather. Temperatures overnight will get cold though, will be clear as well. Temperatures generally falling into the low to mid 20s and then warming up only into the 40s throughout the afternoon hours tomorrow. Tracking this out hour by hour, a lot of sunshine heading into your Tuesday, but then here comes the clouds ahead of that system that Julia and I are talking about. It might start though, Julia, as some snow
I was gonna say,
Tuesday night. So it's kind of interesting setup because we'll be so cold still going into Wednesday morning. And then this is also a concern starting Wednesday at daybreak. We might have freezing rain, not as bad as off to the north, but we might have a little bit of freezing rain, Grand Rapids to the north, especially around Big Rapids. Then here comes those thunderstorms as the warm front moves through, but because we might see so much rain in the morning, that could limit instability somewhat. So we'll keep an update on these storms as they move through, but the best time for severe weather would be 3 p.m. to 10 p.m. on Wednesday before things finally dry out going into Thursday. But right now we are in at least an enhanced risk of severe weather. That's a level 3 out of 5, Julia, for severe storms, and everyone at least in a slight risk. So we'll definitely have to pay attention to this as we get closer to Wednesday. But thankfully tomorrow we will be dry back into the 40s, and then we will warm up briefly with that severe threat, especially Wednesday afternoon and evening. And then thankfully it does look like our severe risk going into the middle portion of April, at least in early April, looks to be lower, Julia, because temperatures actually will be cold enough. We'll probably be in the 30s and 40s for a good chunk of early April.
Spring not feeling like spring just yet. And I have just two questions for you really quick. You know, when you're saying higher or lower chance for instability, I think I kind of know what you're talking about in that, you know, that would be pushing toward possibility for tornado, right? And so you're saying, you know, with the rain and then also the colder temperatures, those are all things that would kind of limit that risk.
Yes, rain lowers instability, and also just colder temperatures. Usually you don't get instability when it's cold at the surface. Instability is you're warm at the surface and cold up in the atmosphere. So as that warm front eventually gets through on Wednesday evening, that will probably mean the biggest threat for severe weather, at least right now, will be closer to Kalamazoo Wednesday afternoon.
And what level were we at yesterday as far as severe storm threat? Were we at a 2 yesterday?
Yeah, we were at basically honestly the same outlook for Wednesday. We were at an enhanced Grand Rapids to the south and then a slight off to the north, and that's the exact same situation that we have going into Wednesday. But it all comes down to that instability, I think, going into Wednesday afternoon.
Gotcha. Well, we want to say thank you to you guys, you, Blake, Sam, Amber. They were all here yesterday if you weren't watching our stream, working hard, working into today, putting a story together, joining me here. Blake's still working, like everybody, our whole weather team really just working around the clock to make sure that you at home have all of the great information. Myself, you know, all of us have the great information. So thank you for working so hard. We know you guys are exhausted and you've got more to come on Wednesday. So thank you so much. I'll let you go and get home and hopefully have some dinner now.
All right, thank you.
Colton, thank you. Okay, and so on this topic, you know, you may have damage to your home, you may have damage on your property, and you may be looking to hire someone to, you know, come and fix that, whether that's, you know, repairs on your home, cleaning up trees. But when we do talk about this, you know, hiring services after some sort of large storm, a lot of the time, unfortunately, we hear about some sort of scam or people being taken advantage of due to, hiring someone who didn't have good intentions or something along that line. So I'm joined now live on Zoom by Katie Grivius with the Better Business Bureau here in West Michigan. Katie, thanks so much for being with us here on the air.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me.
And Katie, you and I have talked about this many times on stories that I've done for our help team here at 13 on Your Side. But I'll have you walk us through, what is typical? We have this large weather event, lots of people in need of hiring some kind of service. Can you talk a little bit about just how this does bring that rise in maybe fraudulent activity or scams of some sort with services?
Yeah, absolutely. So, after a big storm like this, people start to panic and they really want to get that damage taken care of, that cleanup taken care of, get that off their plate, get back to their normal lives. And we do see a lot of small businesses in the communities reaching out, offering to help right away, which is absolutely fabulous. But unfortunately, businesses with bad intentions and scammers also recognize this, especially when we're warned ahead of time that these storms are coming. And they try to reach out and they try to take people's money and then not complete those jobs or do a subpar job. They're unlicensed. And then people are not only still left with that damage and that cleanup, but they have to pay twice to get it fixed.
Yeah, and I know that unfortunately this is something that can happen all the time. When it comes to, okay, I recognize that I need some work done, on my property, whatever that is, things to be keeping in mind for people when they're choosing, someone who they are going to hire. What kinds of things to keep in mind there? I know one of them is, not getting rushed into anything, but I know you have a bunch more sort of pointers for folks.
Absolutely. First thing you should do is call your insurance, find out what's actually covered and how that process works. They may have a list of recommended, construction roofers or, putting on new siding, something like that. Or they may say you can pick someone yourself. So knowing kind of what is going to be covered, what's going to come out of pocket is going to help you moving forward first. Then once you do that, then you want to start to look at the different companies that you may need for your needs. Tree trimmers and yard pickup, they don't really need a license to operate in Michigan. But if you're getting your roof redone or you're getting some siding done or there's damage to windows, some of those do need a license. So it's really important that you take that time, you vet those companies, you make sure they're actually licensed, make sure that they have a good reputation, maybe try to get some quotes, try to talk to some other customers. I know time is not on your side necessarily in these situations, so it's important that you're proactive and you do a little bit more of that research before you just sign anything away. And then you want to make sure that you're not paying the full price up front right away. That's a huge red flag. Contractors and sometimes yard work and tree trimmers, they may need some sort of down payment to reserve your spot, something like that. That totally makes sense. But if it's more or the entire scope of work that you're paying for upfront, that's a huge red flag. We see a lot of scammers and bad businesses ask for that money up front, offer these really great low prices, these awesome deals that are only good for the next day or two because of the storm. Those are some other red flags that, maybe we want to steer clear of. A legitimate and a good company, they're going to make it work with you however they can. Yes, their schedules may be a lot more busy right now because they are helping an entire community with these different projects. But if they're only offering those specials right away, that's shady in itself. You want to work with a company that wants to help you, not try to take advantage of you. And then you want to get everything in writing. And this goes beyond scams. A lot of these companies are small businesses. They're single entities and they're human. They make mistakes. So having things in writing not only makes sure that you understand what the scope of work is going to be, but they understand what you're expecting. So if along the way anything goes wrong or there's any sort of, misconception, it can be cleared up very easily and not a surprise at the very end when payment is due and things like that. And then the Better Business Bureau always recommends that when you are paying for this type of work, try to use a credit card if you can, just because credit cards offer so much extra protection. But we understand that that's not always reasonable in these situations. So don't sign your insurance checks over directly to these companies. Just pay them and then cash that insurance check yourself. Try to write a check. Try to keep some sort of paper trail so that you have proof of all the work that was done, what you were expected to have done, and all of those things, so that if in the end something does go wrong, you have all of that proof with you and you don't have to try to use word of mouth or he said, she said to try to get to the bottom of it.
Yeah, so much good information. And, similar to what you were talking about, when we work on these stories for our help team, a lot of the times, we need to be able to see that contract or something. And if there's, not a contract of some sort, it's very difficult for us to help in those situations just because we have to be able, to prove what was paid for or not done. So ultimately, from the get-go, having that contract is what's best for you at home. Also, what's best for that company. They want some sort of binding document. And I know as well, you can have companies that are trying to rush you into something, which again, a warning sign as we mentioned, but doing that research beforehand is something that's big as well. Checking social media, checking reviews, and then also checking on the Better Business Bureau website, because that's where you're going to see how complaints were handled, if there were even any complaints, and that reputation that a business has. So as when folks are choosing a company, just utilizing those resources, I know you guys say is big as well.
Yes, absolutely. And, the Better Business Bureau, we check the licenses of all the accredited businesses every single year. So that if you find that BBB seal on a company's website, on our website, that we already did some of that vetting for you. And that kind of takes some of that time out of that research, especially if you are in a time crunch and you're trying to figure things out. We've done a little bit of that work for you, so you can already check that off of your list, and it makes your life a little bit easier as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Katie, I so appreciate you walking us through. This is such valuable information that I know people are going to be using, likely for the next couple of weeks as we have to clean up from what happened Sunday. Hopefully we don't see quite as severe a situation on Wednesday, but it is possible. So thank you so much for joining us live here and walking us through all those tips. And I know that if you'd like more information as well, you can always go on the Better Business Bureau's website for a really extensive look at things to keep in mind. But we will let you go. Katie, thanks so much for joining us here.
Thank you so much for having me.
We are going to take just a quick break, and then we will have a guest joining us from the Grand Rapids Police Department talking about those victim services events that are happening over the next couple of weeks. Give us just a moment. Thanks so much for sticking with us here on Evening Plus. I'm joined now by Clarissa Novak, Victim Services Coordinator with Grand Rapids Police Department. Clarissa, thanks so much for being here and joining us tonight. We have you here on Evening Plus because there's a couple of events happening over the next couple of weeks aimed at sort of providing resources for victims in our community of all sorts of different crimes. I first just want to talk about these events that are being hosted. What is the purpose here? What is the goal in hosting these events, these two events that are happening?
Yeah, so the events that we're hosting, it's a series on healing and victims' rights, and we're doing it in observation of National Crime Victims' Rights Week, which is supposed to bring awareness of victimization and also the resources and supports available for folks who experience that. So these events are mostly educational sessions to really let people know different paths to healing. And the first one, whether that be through things like physical yoga demonstrations or information on different therapies that are effective. And then our second session is going to be more focused on victims' rights and options throughout the criminal and civil justice systems.
And if someone is hearing about this and wondering if this is something that would be right for them, if this would include them, what sort of scenarios are these events aimed at helping people through, and healing from and then learning those rights about?
Yeah, I think so. Anybody who's experienced trauma could really benefit from the first one, and or if their loved ones are going through something as well, crime victims or anything of the like, just trying to figure out how to recover and start that path to healing. And again, the second one focused on the victim's rights. I think any victim of crime, or again, a loved one or a friend just trying to learn more, other community professionals who want to learn more about the topic as well, could really benefit from going.
As far as who's going to be hosting these and what sort of support professionals are going to be there to walk people through all of this, what does that look like?
Yeah, so we have our GRPD Victim Services is hosting. We have some clinicians that practice EMDR, eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. Some folks from Calvin talking about self-defense, and then we also have some partners from the YW speaking on the victims' rights portion. So we've tried to pull in experts throughout the community in Grand Rapids to really speak to their experiences and their expertise on the topics.
I won't have you give all the information away that's going to be brought up at the event, but as far as victims' rights, what is going to be discussed there? What sort of information will be presented, in that session?
Yeah, so we're really looking to inform people about the rights that are provided generally if someone's entering the criminal justice process under the Crime Victims' Rights Act. We're trying to inform people what those are, and then also just an overview of the criminal justice process as well, since there's a lot of misunderstandings that happen, and so just general education to empower people to advocate for themselves and also just understand what they're getting into when they start the process.
And I know going to an event like this could sound a little bit daunting, a little bit nerve-wracking for someone depending on what they've gone through, what they're dealing with. As far as the environment that's going to be present for this, and obviously all of the support professionals, what can people expect if they're a little bit nervous about attending?
Yeah, no, we're making it very friendly. It's just very low key. We're going to have food there, some snacks, drinks at the time it is. People can, participate as much as they want, sit in the back, whatever makes them feel comfortable. But really, it's just information. We're not expecting anything from people. It's a way for them to come and feel informed. I know it can be intimidating coming to the GRPD for the second session, but it's social workers, community mental health professionals, advocates, really just trying to create space for learning. So it's really informal.
And obviously this is what you do every day, is to support victims in our community. If people aren't able to make it to these events, can you talk just a little bit about what other resources are available all the time, if people are in need?
Yeah, so if there's ever a need, if someone wants to talk about trauma or victimization that's happening in Grand Rapids, we are always a resource. Can always be called and talk through hypotheticals or talk resources and supports. We also have wonderful community partners like Victim Witness through the Prosecutor's Office, Safe Haven, Puertas Abiertas, the YWCA that we refer to, and they're excellent community agencies too. So however people get the help, that's all we want to see.
Okay, and I know we have a graphic that I put together with the information specifically on those sessions. So again, the first one happening at the Richmond Park Pavilion on the 7th, that's from 6 to 7:30, and then the second at GRPD downtown on the 9th from 6 to 7:30 as well. These are completely free. Anyone is welcome to be there. So that is that information, and that's also up on GRPD social media right now if you need more information or want to register. I so appreciate you joining us for this. I really hope we can get this information out to more people so that if they need that help, it's it's available here in our community.
Yeah, thank you so much. I
Awesome.
appreciate
Clarissa,
it.
thank you. That's going to do it for us tonight on Evening Plus. We so appreciate you being here with us. Of course, Evening Plus is airing Monday through Friday from 6:30 to 7 live. We're able to talk live with guests like Clarissa, who you just heard from, also in-depth weather topics, a closer look at some of our news of day, and oftentimes a little bit of fun as well. We didn't quite have time for that today, but I promise it's sprinkled in there. We so appreciate you joining us here on 13 Plus, our streaming platform. It is free to download on Hulu, Fire, and Apple TV. That's going to do it for us tonight, but we will see you right back here tomorrow. Have a great Monday.